Sneakers, those pairs that replaced your old folks' good old shoes, today they have become a must-have in footwear. And whether you're 10 or 120 years old, there's a strong chance you have at least one pair of sneakers in your shoe closet. It may seem obvious to you now, but it wasn't necessarily the case a few years ago, when we tended to make a big distinction between city shoes and sports shoes. Let's take a leap into the past, embark on a history lesson about sneakers, and go back into the 80s, an era you absolutely have to know if sneakers are your thing. And if you have interest in sneakers, you absolutely have to be subscribed to Rapids Vision. We witnessed the arrival of many brands that didn't necessarily survive the test of time. Many completely disappeared, sometimes for really absurd reasons. I'm thinking specifically of Truth, one of the brands that could have made a huge impact in the sneaker game, but everything ended quickly due to a false rumor that completely destroyed the brand's image. So let me tell you the crazy story of sneaker companies that really sunk deeper than the Titanic. New video, the crazy years of sneaker culture, where it all really began, and since then, well, not much has changed. I would even say that the sneaker world is much less diverse than before. In the 80s, we already had everything we have today. Nike, Adidas, Puma, Converse, and beyond the brands, the sneakers we wear today were already there too. The Air Force Ones, the Jordan Ones, the Dunks, the Jordan 4s, the Stan Smiths, the Puma Suedes, etc. They're classics from the 80s, or released even earlier, and they still overshadow new pairs that have come out in recent years. Except for Yeezys, we haven't seen any new releases that could seriously compete with these iconic pairs, and it's quite logical. The brands have been able to keep the flame alive every year and capitalize on the history surrounding these pairs. And speaking of history, let's talk about it. During all these years, marketing and pop culture have managed to convince us into wearing basketball or running shoes outside of sports. And this is something that's been happening since the 1950s, but the trend was really set in stone during the 80s in America. However, it really took a few years to spread to the rest of the world. Today, we're going to talk about those brands that could have made a name for themselves in the game, but completely disappeared in the 80s and 90s, without ever expanding beyond the United States, where it all began for the sneaker brands we're discussing in this video. These are brands that were quickly forgotten by the older generation, or that the younger ones among you have absolutely never known. And when we talk about completely forgotten brands, how can we not mention Avia? If you live outside the US, you've probably never seen anyone flaunting a pair of Avia shoes, and yet it was a brand that had a huge impact in the 80s. And by some, it was even considered one of the future leaders in the sneaker market at that time. Founded in 1979, they were really shaking up the giants of the game in sportswear, and they quickly succeeded in having a significant impact in running with their highly advanced sole design for the time. Or in basketball, where you could see big names in the NBA wearing their pairs, such as Clyde Drexler or Scottie Pippen. For example, it was quite common to see NBA players running in the Avia 880, one of the most expensive basketball shoes of that time, and especially a pair that greatly inspired Virgil Abloh in creating his Louis Vuitton trainers.
They're the same picture.
Today, the brand still exists, but they have completely abandoned their basketball heritage, premium pairs, and even the aspect of design and performance to become a simple $15 shoe brand at Walmart. There's absolutely no joke here. One of the most iconic sneaker brands of the 80s has become even more washed up than Skechers, and you can find their products mainly at Walmart, with prices ranging from $15 to $40 depending on the models. A sad ending for a brand that was expected to bring a lot to the sneaker industry in terms of design and innovation. And if you want to know why this brand is completely done today, it's very simple. In 1987, Reebok decided to acquire this competing brand for $180 million, and the objective was not really to develop the brand, but rather to get rid of a dangerous competitor that could have potentially generated billions of dollars in revenue today. They could have been much more ambitious, but the founders chose to get rid of the brand for a big paycheck. During that time, we also had our fair share of oddities, like the brand Kinney Shoes. They actually did collabs with Travis Scott before Travis Scott, as you could find shoes with the swoosh upside down as early as the 70s. But as if that wasn't original enough, they also created sneakers with 4 stripes on the side. And the most incredible thing is that they had both of these branding elements on several models at the same time. They realized that Nike and Adidas were above the rest and that they needed to imitate them. But they couldn't really agree on which brands to copy, so you could find imitations of both Nike and Adidas at their store. Originally, they were a shoe factory that simply realized that instead of producing shoes for other brands, it would be more profitable to copy Nike and Adidas and sell them directly to consumers with higher profit margins. And obviously, it was more profitable. They made quite a lot of money. They were even partners with the NBA and distributed their shoes all over the United States. And if you want to know what they became, they went from being a shoe factory and a sports shoe brand to a simple shoe distributor that still exists today and that you all know.
Who?
Well, Kinney Shoes is now Foot Locker, which has always been a big collaborator with Nike and has had exclusive Nike releases, such as the TN for example, and has contributed greatly to Nike's success. Goes to show that at Nike, they're not resentful, however, we know that they're cunning, to the point that they might be behind the rumor that completely killed the Troop brand. Troop was one of the trendiest brands in urban culture in the United States in the 80s, and it started more or less the same way as Ralph Lauren, in the Bronx with someone who had the project of creating and selling exclusive and premium products. Initially just a sneaker store manager, he decided to create his own products, heavily inspired by what was already being done at the time, but adding his own touch and especially a quality well above what could be found at Nike, for example. They were sports shoes designed to flex in the streets, the lifestyle sneakers we know today, and that's exactly what young people were looking for at that time. And it's still the case nowadays, since there was a similar notion of hype and rarity behind Troop pairs as we can find with Dunks or Jordan 1s today. It really was an insanely visionary brand at the time, and it showed because success did not wait long to arrive. In just 3 years, the brand became one of the coolest streetwear brands in the United States, worn by rap giants like LL Cool J, MC Hammer, Ultramagnetic MCs, etc., generating millions of dollars in revenue just starting from their store in the Bronx, without ever investing in marketing. The brand was so effective and totally in tune with the codes of the time that everyone was clamoring for their sneakers and clothing. And there was a bright future ahead for this brand. But everything changed overnight when a rather absurd rumor started circulating about the brand. Troop, the favorite brand of urban culture mostly worn by ethnic minorities, was supposedly created by members of the Klan to make money off African Americans. The name Troop was said to come from the phrase to rule over oppressed people. And according to rumors, insults and racist phrases were hidden under the soles and behind the seams of the shoes. Initially, it was just neighborhood gossip, but it quickly turned into an urban legend that everyone started to believe and spread without much questioning. All the rappers who proudly wore Troop just a few months earlier started boycotting the brand, and we even got some punchlines about the brand.
Cause I write rhymes in more than just 2 scoops, and Puma's the brand cause the Klan makes troops.
It was rumors, but man, goddamn, they flew. Must have been true because man, we done banned they shoes.
Obviously, it was completely false. The brand had absolutely nothing to do with that. And even today, Teddy Held, the founder of the brand, doesn't really know who could have started the rumor. It could have been any of his competitors at that time, from the shoe store across the street to Nike, or simply people who were jealous and wanted to see him fail.
These people, they are evil, pure and simple.
In any case, the brand still generated over $80 million during its short run, and the founder came out relatively well. He made his money and left the sneaker world for real estate, because as you can imagine, the brand couldn't recover after such a rumor. However, the brand made a comeback a few years later, and it's still possible to buy their products online for those nostalgic for the 80s. These are some stories of iconic sneaker brands that had a rather unfortunate ending, to make way for the 5 to 6 brands we know today, which offer us the same 5 to 6 pairs that everyone wears. It's something I find really unfortunate. There are quite a few pairs from smaller brands or designers that deserve a little more attention, and I advise you to explore what's being done everywhere and go beyond Nike and Adidas, because I think you're missing out on some real gems. And if you don't know where to find new pairs, we post Copper Drop every week on our Instagram stories, featuring pairs that you've probably never seen in your lives, so you should come and follow us over there.